In this lesson, we're going to look at grouped data in a frequency table and then how to make a histogram using that frequency table. So sometimes when you have a variable or whatever you're measuring that has a large range of values, so in this example, we've got 25 people took part in a general knowledge quiz. Their scores are recorded below. So we've got quite a few different scores here, and it wouldn't really make sense to take a tally of each individual score. So what we do is we group the data into what we call class intervals. So these things down the side here are called class intervals. And I'll just write that down. Okay, so we might have an interval of 0 to 9, 10 to 19, 20 to 29, 30 to 39, 40 to 49, 50 to 59, and 60 to 69. And it's up to you the width of these intervals. So by width I mean from 0 to 9, or if you'd done 0 to 4 or something like that. But it makes sense to do things that are in round numbers. Like I've got 10 in each of the class intervals. I've got a spread of 10, so that makes a bit of sense with this data. It's also up to you how many class intervals that you have, but usually between 5 and 15 is a good rule of thumb. So here we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, so we're within that 5 to 15. It's also really important when you create intervals here that all of your data fits within these intervals. So say I had a score of like 89, that wouldn't work because I haven't actually got anywhere that I could place 89 in these intervals. So you need to make sure that all the data fits in. You also need to make sure there's no overlapping. So if I had made this first interval 0 to 10, that wouldn't make any sense because if someone had a score of 10, I wouldn't know whether to mark them on in this class or in this one here. So make sure your intervals don't overlap. So I'll change that back to 9. And there shouldn't be any gaps in the intervals. So I go right from 0 to 9, 10 to 19, 20 to 29, and so on. I wouldn't go 20 to 25 and then make my next one 30 to 35 and skip out a bunch of numbers. Okay? Now, right now we're dealing with discrete data. So people's results in a quiz would be discrete data. If we're dealing with continuous data, height, weight, something like that, you actually set up the intervals the way I had it set up in the beginning. So you would have 0 to, and then that would mean anything up to 10, anything up to the beginning of the next interval. So you would leave that blank, and that's because continuous data could take on any value. So you could have 9.99 or 9.999, so that would go in that first class here. So when you're setting up your frequency table with continuous data, you don't need to put like a second endpoint. You just start with the lowest value that would go in, and you put a dash, and then the next interval would be the lowest value for that interval, and so on. Okay, I'm just going to erase a couple of things on here so that we've got a nice clean chart to start with. Okay. Now I'm going to put this data into the tally chart the way I did before. So the first person here is 22, so that would go here in between 20 and 29. 47 would go here, and so on. Okay, so here's my completed frequency table. So I've got one score in between 0 and 9, one score between 10 and 19, 3 between 20 and 29, 6 between 30 and 39, and so on. And this should add up to 25. So let's just check and see if I've done it correctly. 1 plus 1 is 2, plus 3 is 5, plus 6 is 11, plus 9 is 20, plus 4 is 24, plus 1 is 25. So my total there is 25. Okay, so now we're going to look at how you would take this data and put it into your CAS calculator to create a histogram. So to use our CAS calculator, we're going to use the spreadsheet and list function as we did before, and I've just put all of the data from those quiz scores in as sort of raw data. So I've got 25 different scores that I've put onto my spreadsheet. So you can stop the video now and put the data in so that you can follow along with the video. Once you've got all of your data in, we're going to make a histogram, and we're going to do it the same way that we did before. So if you think you remember how to do it, it'd be a good idea to try and do it now. Otherwise, you can follow along. So we'll go to the menu, and we're going to pick data, number 3, and we're going to do a quick graph. So I'm going to click number 9. And here I've got a dot plot. So now I have to tell my calculator what kind of graph I want. So I'm going to go back to menu, and I'm going to say what plot type I want. So I want a histogram, so I'm going to choose number 3. And so now it's put all of my data into a histogram. But what I really wanted was to use the group frequency that I did before. So what we'd have to do is, if you click Control Menu, number 5 is bin settings. So that's going to allow me to change the class width. Okay, so if you remember, the class width before was from 0 to 9, so that's actually 10 pieces of data could go in that. So 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 is 10 numbers. So each of the class widths were equal. So I'm going to choose number 1, equal bin width, and the width I want is 10. And alignment just means your starting number. So what was your lowest value? So my lowest value was 0 because I started at 0 to 9 for my first interval. And then I'm going to click OK. And you can see that I've got a histogram there. So if you hover over each of the bars, you can see here that that says it's between 0 and 10. And the square bracket means that it includes 0, but the round bracket around the 10 means it doesn't include 10. So it's every value up to 10. And you can see the 1 there, so that meant that the frequency was 1, which is what we had for our frequency table. If I go to the second bar, between 10 and 20, not including 20, I had a frequency of 1. Between 20 and 30, a frequency of 3. Between 30 and 40, a frequency of 6, and so on. Now I'm going to show you how to change a few things just so that you can see your graph a little bit better. So if we go back to the menu, and if you go to number 5, window/zoom, first of all, if you pick number 2, zoom data, it will display the histogram in its entirety. So if I hit number 2, you can see now I've got a full picture of that histogram. If you wanted to zoom in or out, you can obviously use number 3 or 4 by zooming in or zooming out of the data. You can also adjust the x-axis. We did this before with the histogram. So at the moment, my minimum x value is at my minimum x value is at -5. I really just needed it at 0, so I can change that to 0. The maximum and the maximum, I think the maximum I went up to was 69, so I can maybe just change that to 70. And the highest frequency that I had, I think, was 9, so we can keep the maximum y value at 10. Okay, so now if I hit OK, you can see now I've got a nice clear picture of my histogram. And that's it really. So please make sure that you've taken notes on how to do this. You're going to have to be able to do that on your own. So putting your data into a grouped frequency table, and then from there going to a histogram on your CAS calculator.